Well, Rick is a hard act to follow, as is Mariette, and in fact it's very intimidating to speak to all of you Williams people because I am a Sarah Lawrence girl. So you know, to start with, I'm a wacko. I mean, you know. At least that's what my generation was thought of. We were thought to be really, really strange. Actually, we proved to be more or less normal. I thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really honored. And I think that Rick and I have some things in common. I think all of us have something in common. But I wanted to start by talking about your extraordinary title, Going Rogue, Maverick Leadership in the Arts. So I kept looking at the title, and I kept thinking about it. And finally, I'm old-fashioned. I keep a dictionary by my desk, so I didn't Google, but I picked up my dictionary, and I even checked the date for you. It's a 1997 dictionary, so it's a little dated. But rogue, a dishonest or worthless person, a scoundrel, a mischievous person, a horse inclined to shirk or misbehave, an inferior, diseased, or non-typical individual from a crop plant or field, or being vicious and destructive or dangerous or uncontrollable, resembling a rogue elephant. Now I ask you, are we? Okay. Then, Maverick. Did you know Samuel Maverick, a pioneer in 1867 who did not brand his cattle? Therefore, Maverick is an unbranded calf or an independent individual who does not go along with a group or party. Now, depending on how you look at that particular character trait, it's either extremely ornery, which I suspect it is in my case, ornery, or, well, I don't know what the other, anyway, ornery, I suspect. I don't know if this leads one to leadership. So I have been thinking about this question of leadership and also thought, well, if one is a leader, then there must be followers. Now, I don't really think I probably have followers. What I set out to do, unless it's in the role model, so it's possible that it's in the role model, and I hope that might be the case, especially with young women. I want to tell you a story, and you'll see where I began, or maybe a story or two. The first one is that I was walking down the street with my mother, Avenida Reforma in Mexico, where I spent some of my growing up years, and I think I was 4 or 5. She took me by the hand, and she said, "There is something I want to show you." And we crossed the street, and we went into Palacio de Bellas Artes. And there, she said, and she was holding me fiercely by the hand, she said, "I want you to never forget this." And what we saw was Diego Rivera on a scaffolding. Now, I thought for many years, well, recently I thought, this must be a faux memory. How could I possibly have seen Diego Rivera on a scaffolding painting? Because those murals were done before I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents had a friend who's an artist, Mexican artist, and last year he was 90, and I visited him all the time, and he was my maestro. And I said, could this have been something I really saw? Yes, he said. He was repairing the murals. Wow. So that I think is one of my formative moments of my life to see this artist and my mother being so emphatic about, do not ever forget this moment, this magic. And what do I do now? I work with artists. What have I done most of my life? What did I want to be? An artist. When I was in my early 20s, I bumped up against Mr. Rauschenberg and Mr. Johns, and I thought, genius. Well, maybe I should turn the corner, although I'm not so sure it was so deliberate. What happened simultaneously with that bumping up against these two amazing artists was that out of the blue, I was going to graduate school. I hadn't even finished. I was studying pre-Columbian art and archaeology. I was teaching studio because I was a painter. But out of the blue, my brother, this is how life changes one, my brother, who lived in Washington, went to a party, met a guy who was a curator at one of the Smithsonian museums. And this fellow said, we're looking for staff. My brother said, oh, my sister, she's looking for a job. So I got on the train, I went to Washington, I met the guy. They offered me a job. I became a curator at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. What did I know? Nothing. I'm sorry, but I don't think it happens anymore. But so you see, this is not the path to leadership. I don't know. Okay. So the next thing that happened was that very young woman is given a curatorial position in an august institution mainly run by gentlemen. And she was also given a parking space in the garage because of her curatorial level. Oh my, you cannot imagine the battles that ensued from the parking spot in the garage. So I did my best under the circumstances. I was, among other things, in charge of the education department. I had always, looking back, I had always taught. I loved working with small children. I would teach them painting. I liked to do things like put the finger paints out on a table and then take the hose, let them mush and paint and do whatever they wanted, and then take a hose and, well, whisk it away, which they seemed to enjoy as much as I did. So there I was, heading an education department and also having a gallery to work with and not having a clue. So I went around the country and I looked at what museums were doing. And one, a dearth of contemporary art at the time, and two, very boring education programs. So again, not knowing anything, I think sometimes not knowing is the best thing of all. I stumbled on some theater techniques and took a course in improvisational theater, learned, and what interested me, what fascinated me was that I saw how intense children were when they participated in improvisational theater. And their focus was so powerful. And there seemed to be a lot of learning going on. So I thought, okay, can I transfer this in some way into the experience with works of art? And so that then it became a rather notorious thing. There were articles in the New York Times about this crazy thing in Washington where children were performing in a certain sense in order to learn and to study works of art. But it did work, at least for a certain amount of time. But I think the battle about the parking spot was such that I, at some point, felt this institution, this bureaucracy, is not for me. And the experience of having traveled the country extensively, both in teaching these techniques and also in doing some contemporary exhibitions, and working with various museum colleagues, made me feel that, and this is around the mid-70s, that there needed to be something for contemporary art that didn't exist. So I have to confess to you that I'm a serial nonprofit entrepreneur. I think that's what I am, sort of loco. I met a woman who was knowledgeable about contemporary art, met her in passing, and in 2 minutes we had formed a new organization called ICI, Independent Curators International, and I led that organization for 20 years, sending exhibitions of contemporary art around the country and finally around the world. It still goes on. I think the leadership realization was that founding directors must move on or institutions cannot flourish. And at that point, curiously, when I had made the decision, told the board, at that point I was invited by Channel 13 in New York to consult for them. They were starting a program on the arts, felt they did not have enough information in the visual arts to be successful, and could I come and advise? I started learning about television. I saw that there was something that could be done that I thought hadn't been done, and did it again, which was to start another organization with the idea, and this is the organization I lead now, Art 21, with the idea that we could use television and media in a way that had not ever happened before, to take art to enormous numbers of people. Now, I know it's not the immediate experience of being in the museum with Lisa, looking at the objects inches from your face, but I also felt that artists as creative role models were really the most important vehicle for change I could imagine, and that by using television, by using film media, the internet, we could effect change of an incredible kind. And what I really cared about the most was that young people sitting in a classroom somewhere, whether it's high school or lower grades or college or postgrad or whatever, that young people would see many models for creative thinking, and that they might be led in new directions, and that they might have the thought of, oh, that might be me. And I think Rick is an exemplar of that. That might be me. Maybe I think a bit differently, and maybe I can go there. So so I would hope that it is not that I who am the leader, but it's all those young people whom I think we have influenced who will become leaders, and that leaders in whatever the field, whether they become artists or scientists or community organizers or whatever. Thank you.